The world faced two global crises at once, and exactly when we needed the world's leaders to come together and rise to the moment, they couldn't. They were largely stuck at home like the rest of us. And this really hampered efforts to tackle the pandemic and the global economic crisis that it ushered in a just, coordinated manner. This past year exposed serious vulnerabilities in the way that international diplomacy works. And this is what worries me. Not just now in this present horrible moment, but thinking ahead to the challenges of the 21st century, be it the next pandemic, be it catastrophic climate change. My great fear is that the institutions we've got just aren't up to the job. COVID laid bare how much we too often take for granted: the ability to see friends, get a bite to eat, hug a loved one. It's exposed how much of our daily routines, our habits, our lives are premised on physicality, that we're able to move about, that we're able to see each other, that we're able to shake hands. COVID has taken millions of lives, and it's taken these simple assumptions from us as well. It's forced us to rethink how we work, how we spend our downtime, even how we just relate to one another. And this is as true in our everyday lives as it is in the world of international diplomacy. We have, to an extent, adapted, and so has diplomacy. Zoom and FaceTime and Skype and all else have become regular, ever-present features in our lives. And there are upsides to this. Convening meetings is easier. Fewer hours are lost to commuting. And we're, of course, all too familiar with the downsides: the loss of separation between home and work, the physical effects of staring at a screen for far too long, and the psychological effects of isolation, of constant trauma. And when it comes to international diplomacy, the benefits at first seem to outweigh the drawbacks. The complexities of scheduling meetings between world leaders is reduced significantly. There's no time lost to travel or energy sapped by jet lag from traveling across time zones. And in many ways, the move to diplomats and political leaders communicating via Zoom really isn't all that surprising. It's the obvious next step in the advance of communications technology, one that follows the telephone, which followed the telegraph, and so on. But when it comes to the biggest challenges, the most contentious issues, the trickiest negotiations, there is no substitute for getting people together in a room. International summits, a mainstay of global governance, cannot be reproduced online. And this severely undermines the efficacy of the diplomatic institution in moments of global crisis. We've seen attempts to hold summits online this past year, from the G7 to the G20, from the WHO to OPEC. And what we've seen in them are the world's leaders reduced to being pixelated images in tiny squares on computer screens, a far cry from the usual grandeur and splendor of an international summit. And we've also seen attempts to cling to hallmarks of summit rituals, such as when Saudi Arabia hosted an online G20 summit. They attempted to recreate the annual family photo of leaders by stitching together a bunch of individual pictures of leaders and then projecting them together. It was well-intentioned. It was also odd. And it's certainly illustrative of the desire to hang on to normality, while illustrative of the impossibility of definitively bridging the gulf between the virtual and the physical. Summitry, and what gives it its unique added value in the diplomat's toolbox, is is fundamentally premised on physicality. And this is what renders it so vulnerable to COVID and the need to socially or to physically distance. This is most apparent in what I call the loss of intermoments, the informal, apparently unscripted happenings between formal summit proceedings, the quiet chats in the corner of a room, the impromptu little conversations between meetings, the off-the-cuff exchanges during breaks. All these things, they might seem insignificant, but they really matter. Academic scholarship tends to mostly focus on what is said in formal meetings and what is announced afterwards. But ask any practitioner, ask any politician, and they'll stress that it's what's on the sidelines, what takes place there between them. That's where the action really is. And all of this, all of it, is lost in the shift online. It's in intermoments that relationships are built and affirmed, that negotiating positions are sussed out, that favors are asked, that ideas are mooted. This is the bedrock of solid diplomatic practice. Just thinking back to recent G7 and G20 summits, it's very much what's happened on the sidelines that's been so significant, whether it be Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin huddling to strike a deal over Syria's chemical weapons, or more performative moments such as Putin giving a warm welcome to Mohammed bin Salman after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, or scene-stealing, relationship-building walks between Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron, the walk that they first took when they met on the sidelines of a G7. All this stuff, while some of it may seem more trivial than other things, nonetheless, it serves as the basis for effective diplomatic engagement. And all of this is lost in the shift online. There are, simply put, no quiet corners in cyberspace. When you're online, you're always on. You're always being recorded. There's no room for plausible deniability. There's no room for quietly and privately building rapport and trust. In speaking with diplomats and officials these past few months, this is exactly what they've reported. No one is having informal chats on the margins, and even the formal summit meetings themselves have been largely reduced to just leaders reading pre-prepared statements. There's no frank discussion, no real engagement with one another's positions or pressures, just banality. Summitry has been hollowed out. The world's crisis committees at this moment of unprecedented emergency aren't able to do what we need them to do. Now, the pandemic will end, but many of the adjustments that we've made will not. The future of diplomacy almost certainly will involve a lot more video calls. But I don't see online summitry sticking around. Too much is lost when the physical is removed, when intermoments can't work their diplomatic magic. What we're most likely to see is a hybrid form of engagement wherein online meetings are increasingly used to prepare in advance for in-person summits later on. Summits are grand, expensive undertakings, and the temptation is ripe, even post-pandemic, to do away with them. They're big, costly undertakings, but that, in part, is the point. Precisely because they are big, costly, and difficult things, energies are focused to get results. The scale of the summit spectacle necessitates success. Publics don't tolerate leaders coming back from summits empty-handed. The imperative to justify the summit as an extraordinary political phenomenon at the figurative heights of international relations incentivizes negotiators and focuses energies in a way that online meetings simply cannot. There is no real immediate cost to logging off a video call and not getting results, but there certainly is to ending a summit without something of substance to announce. So in this way too, virtual summits just can't deliver. Not only do leaders need to be physically together to take advantage of intermoments, but the very act of them coming together sets the stage for generating the kind of ambitious policies we need if we're going to face the 21st century and come out ahead. It's often when things are taken away from us that we come to see and feel their value. We've learned from COVID that no amount of phone calls or video chats or socially distanced anything can really make up for not being together. And the same is true for diplomacy, which at its essence is about people and relationships. Online meetings can still be had and policies can still be discussed, but what gives summit diplomacy its real added value is fundamentally and solely to be found in the incentives and opportunities that arise when people are brought together. And when we're able to do that, I am confident that we can rise to the challenges of tomorrow.